Picture this, a seemingly ordinary Thursday morning on ITV, Lorraine Kelly sitting there in her bright studio with her signature warm smile, welcoming one of the most polarizing figures in British media, Piers Morgan. Everyone tuning in expected the usual mix of banter, maybe a few cheeky jabs, a plug for his latest show, and then a polite goodbye. But within minutes, the atmosphere completely shifted. What started as a casual chat about Donald Trump, the Epstein files, and the new guidelines on single-sex spaces suddenly detonated into an all-out war. Piers, never one to bite his tongue, launched straight into his unfiltered views on trans rights and the protection of women's spaces, insisting that no one should be forced to sacrifice biological women's safety and privacy in the name of inclusion. Lorraine tried to keep it light, but you could see the discomfort creeping in. Her usual bubbly demeanor started cracking as Piers refused to back down, hammering home point after point with that trademark intensity that has made him both loved and loathed by millions. Dr. Amir Khan, the resident GP who was also on the sofa, jumped in to challenge him, but it was clear the real tension was building between Piers and Lorraine herself. She kept trying to steer the conversation back to safer ground, but Piers wasn't having it. He called out what he saw as the absurdity of trained staff having to police toilets and changing rooms, sarcastically offering to stand outside to lose himself and ask the questions. The studio audience gasped, the crew exchanged nervous glances, and Lorraine's smile was now completely gone. She looked visibly rattled, repeatedly interrupting, raising her voice in a way viewers had literally never heard before. This wasn't the gentle, fluffy Lorraine everyone knows. This was a host who suddenly realized she was losing complete control of her own show. And Piers, sensing blood in the water, doubled down even harder, accusing the entire woke establishment of bullying women into silence. The temperature in the studio skyrocketed, and what happened next left the entire nation talking for days. As the debate raged on, Lorraine's attempts to regain control became more and more desperate. She kept saying things like "let's move on" and "we don't need to go there," but Piers was in full attack mode, refusing to let the subject drop. He pointed out the hypocrisy of celebrities and presenters who claim to be feminists yet stay silent when women's rights are eroded. Although he never named Lorraine directly, the implication hung heavy in the air, and she knew it. Her face flushed, her Scottish accent got sharper, and for the first time in her decades-long career, she snapped. She told Piers his views were dangerous and harmful, words that are usually reserved for the most extreme guests, not a former colleague who once sat just meters away on Good Morning Britain. Piers laughed in disbelief, firing back that the only thing dangerous was allowing biological men into women's private spaces and then shaming anyone who dared to object. Dr. Amir tried to play peacemaker, but he too got dragged into the crossfire, with Piers dismantling his arguments one by one. The viewers at home were texting each other frantically, posting live clips on social media, unable to believe what they were watching. This wasn't the gentle morning television they signed up for. This was primetime level drama at 9:30 a.m. Lorraine's producers were reportedly screaming in her earpiece to cut to a break, but the segment was live, and there was no commercial break scheduled for another 8 minutes. Piers could sense the panic, and like a shark smelling blood, he kept pushing. He brought up real women who had been affected, rape victims who felt unsafe, and refugees, female athletes losing scholarships to biological males, prisoners being housed with violent men identifying as women. Each example landed like a hammer, and Lorraine had no comeback. She just sat there, arms crossed, looking more and more furious. Then came the moment that broke the internet. Lorraine, in a voice trembling with rage, told Piers that if he couldn't have a civil conversation, he should leave her studio right now. The nation collectively gasped. Piers Morgan, the man who once stormed off Good Morning Britain rather than apologize for his opinions, now found himself on the receiving end of a walkout demand. But this time, he wasn't going anywhere quietly. He looked Lorraine dead in the eye and said, "You want me to leave because I'm telling the truth? Fine, but the British public deserves to hear this." He then turned directly to the camera, bypassing Lorraine entirely, and delivered a 3-minute uninterrupted monologue that has since been viewed over 50 million times online. He spoke about the silencing of women, the cowardice of broadcasters who caved to activist pressure, and how morning television had become a safe space for woke ideology but not for actual debate. Lorraine tried to interrupt several times, but Piers just raised his voice and kept going. The director cut her microphone feed in desperation, but Piers' mic was still live, and his words boomed through living rooms across the country. Finally, security appeared at the side of the set, 2 burly guards in black suits, ready to escort him out if necessary. Lorraine, now completely red-faced, stood up and declared the interview over, saying she would not allow her show to be used as a platform for transphobic rhetoric. Piers laughed bitterly, stood up slowly, and said, "Transphobic? I've got 4 kids. I don't care who anyone sleeps with or identifies as. I care about women's safety, but sure, kick me off for saying that." He then did something no one expected. He walked around the desk, hugged a stunned Dr. Amir, shook his hand, and said, "Good debate, mate," before turning to Lorraine and saying, "We've known each other 20 years, Lorraine, I'm disappointed in you." Then, in true Piers fashion, he didn't storm off in rage. He walked off calmly, waving to the studio audience who were now on their feet applauding. The cameras cut to a flustered Lorraine trying to compose herself as the show went to an emergency break 3 minutes early. When the show returned, Lorraine was visibly shaken. She apologized to viewers for the heated exchange and claimed that Piers had crossed a line by refusing to respect boundaries, but the damage was done. Social media exploded immediately. #Piers was right trended #1 in the UK within 20 minutes, and clips of Piers' final monologue were shared by everyone from J.K. Rowling to major politicians. Women's rights groups hailed him as a hero, while certain activist corners branded him public enemy #1 yet again. But this time was different. The overwhelming majority of the British public sided with Piers. Poll after poll showed over 70% agreed with his stance on single-sex spaces. Lorraine's own viewers turned on her in droves, accusing her of hypocrisy for years of claiming to be a feminist while now seemingly prioritizing ideology over women's safety. Her Instagram comments were flooded with disappointed fans saying they would no longer watch the show. ITV executives went into crisis mode, issuing a statement that they support freedom of expression but also respect all communities, the usual corporate nonsense that satisfied no one. Behind the scenes, sources claimed Lorraine was furious with her producers for booking Piers in the first place, while Piers' team leaked that he had warned them the interview would be explosive but was told Lorraine could handle it. Piers himself went straight to his Uncensored show that night and played the entire unedited segment, racking up his highest ever ratings. He dedicated the episode to every woman who has been told to shut up and put up for the sake of someone else's feelings. The Sun ran the headline "Piers booted OFF Lorraine after epic takedown," while the Daily Mail called it the most important 5 minutes of television this year. In the days that followed, the fallout was relentless. Lorraine tried to move on, doing fluffy segments with celebrities and cooking demos, but viewers weren't having it. Her ratings dropped sharply, with many switching over to BBC Breakfast or simply turning off the TV altogether. Ofcom received thousands of complaints, split almost evenly between those offended by Piers and those offended by Lorraine cutting him off. Piers, meanwhile, became the most talked about man in Britain yet again. He was invited onto every major podcast, radio show, and even American networks wanting his take. He repeatedly said he bore no personal ill will toward Lorraine, that they had shared many laughs over the years, but that she had let herself become captured by the very ideology she used to mock. He pointed out old clips of her joking about political correctness gone mad, contrasting it with her behavior on the day. Women from all walks of life began sharing their stories online using #StandWithPiers, recounting experiences of feeling unsafe in changing rooms, toilets, and refuges. Sports stars, prison officers, and domestic violence shelter workers all spoke out in support. Even some trans people came forward saying they agreed that single-sex spaces should remain exactly that. The debate Piers started on Lorraine's sofa became the national conversation, forcing politicians to address the issue properly for the first time in years. Labour backtracked on some of their previous statements, while the Tories promised new legislation to protect women's spaces. Lorraine, under immense pressure, eventually issued a clarification saying she supported women's rights but believed in kindness and inclusion, a statement that pleased precisely no one and was widely mocked as sitting on the fence. Weeks later, the incident is still being talked about. Lorraine's show has been permanently shortened by ITV bosses, with many whispering that the real reason wasn't budget cuts but the advertiser backlash after the episode. Piers, on the other hand, has seen his platform grow bigger than ever. His subscriber count on YouTube and his talk TV ratings have skyrocketed, and he's now regularly called the voice of the silent majority. He has said multiple times that he never wanted to fall out with Lorraine, but that some things are bigger than personal relationships. The truth is, that morning changed everything. It exposed the fault lines in British society, the fear of speaking out, and the cowardice of mainstream media when faced with uncomfortable truths. Piers Morgan didn't just get kicked off Lorraine Kelly's show, he kicked open a door that had been locked for far too long. And as uncomfortable as it was for Lorraine and her producers, the British public finally got to have the conversation they had been denied for years. Whether you love him or hate him, one thing is undeniable: Piers Morgan stood his ground when everyone else was running scared, and in doing so, he reminded us all that free speech isn't free if you're only allowed to say what the loudest activists approve of. Lorraine may have wanted him gone from her sofa that day, but Piers Morgan's message is now in living rooms across the country, and it isn't going anywhere.